What is going on? Happy NFL Sunday, week 3 of the NFL season, and we are finally here back on the Slaw Sports Show. It's been almost a month since our last episode, but we are back here today, and I'm excited for a full slate of NFL games today. But before we get to the NFL and start breaking down these games, and actually real quick, since it's been so long, let's preview what we're doing. Because the Slaw Sports Show is on a Sunday today. No more Slaw Sports Shows on Fridays. No more Slaw Sports Shows Saturdays. A new setup now on the Slaw Sports Show. From now on, we'll be live on YouTube and WSOE 89.3 on Sundays from 11 to 12. And every week, we're going to be having our fantasy stardoms and situms of the week. We're going to be having our locks and upsets of the week in the NFL on Sunday. And on Mondays, we will have the podcast rolling along with Overreaction Mondays, breaking down the wildness that we will be seeing each and every Sunday of the NFL season. But we're here today, week 3 of the NFL season, September 26th, NFL Sunday on the Slaw Sports Show. So thank you all for joining. If you're live on YouTube and if you're listening in your car driving around the Elon Burlington area, thank you for tuning in to the Slaw Sports Show. But before we get started with the NFL, there's something we got to get to first. Last night, UFC 266 was incredible. Last night, 2 title fights in that one. The return of Nick Diaz and 2 more great fights on that main card. And let's go ahead and break this down first before we move into NFL Sunday and get started of what's to come later on today. So let's go ahead and start off at the beginning of this main card last night, which again, UFC 266 never fails with UFC Saturdays to disappoint. 266 last night was no different at all. The first fight, Jessica Andrade, first round TKO. All of the bettors bet on this fight not even going all the way, not going to a decision. They were able to pay out in the first round, knocking out Cynthia Calvano. This one was a great fight, but we all knew what was in stake of this one. Jessica Andrade is a menace in the octagon and made that presence known again last night with that first round TKO. Just straight ground and pound, stop the fight, over, yick 'em up, move on to the next one. Curtis Razor Blades against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. 2 big boys in the octagon. Unfortunately, this isn't what I love to see from the heavyweights. You guys all know, and if you don't, I love my big boy fights in UFC in this heavyweight division. I love just the pound for pound, stand up and go at it. The big guys always never fail to give us in the UFC. Rozenstruik, that's what we expected to see. Stand up, pound for pound, and just blow for blow in the stand-up game. However, Curtis Razor Blades was key in getting him on the ground, using his body, and just really making it to where Rozenstruik wasn't able to get off the ground in that fight and ended up winning by unanimous decision. That one never was really close because of the ground control. My biggest hate in terms of heavyweight fights, I hate the ground control game in the UFC and the heavyweight division. But the rest of the divisions, it's fine. Just heavyweights, I like seeing the big boys just sling it and go toe for toe for each other in the stand-up. It's not what we saw in this one. Curtis Razor Blades gets a unanimous decision win over Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now we move in to the return of Nick Diaz. 6 years it has been since Nick Diaz, I think it was 6 or 9 years, maybe 9 years since Nick Diaz was in the octagon and he took on Robbie Lawler in what turned out to be a good old-fashioned drunk uncle slugfest at a tailgate fight. In this one, both guys were really slow in terms of their punches. Both guys were slow in terms of everything that they were doing in the octagon yesterday. But at the end of the day, their punches, their strikes, they were landing. They were very efficient in this fight last night. But Robbie Lawler ultimately got a third-round TKO against Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz just couldn't hang in the return, but it was great to see him back out there. Hope to see more fights with him in the future, back in the UFC, and get back into the swing of things. He's a little slow out of the gate, but finally start getting on his roll, start hitting some combos in there. on Robbie Lawler and really just started making him pay and making him feel it going into that one. And now we get to our co-main event. 2 fights, two title fights. And we're going to start off with the women's flyweight division with Valentina Shevchenko, arguably the second baddest woman in the world behind Amanda Nunes right now. Valentina Shevchenko had a 4th-round TKO over Lauren Murphy. Shout out to Lauren Murphy for even making it into the 4th round against Valentina Shevchenko. I didn't think that was going to be the case. No way, no how did I think that Lauren Murphy would make it to the 2nd round against Shevchenko. But nevertheless, the outcome remains the same. Shevchenko continues to prove that really no woman can face her right now in the octagon. Doesn't matter who it is. You cannot go toe for toe with Valentina Shevchenko. She'll get you with the kicks. She'll get you with the spinning elbows. She'll even take you down if she needs to. Right now, her game is just flawless, and she is already booked to being one of the Hall of Famers in the UFC as it stands right now, just in terms of the pure dominance she has fought with in the UFC. And now, finally, let's go to the final fight. The main event, men's featherweight title fight. Alexander Volkanovski, the current reigning, defending, and undisputed featherweight champion of the world, took on top contender Brian Ortega. And this one was the fight of the night. We talked about a round there with Nick Diaz where it seemed like that could be one of the best rounds of the year in terms of the UFC fights we've seen so far. But Volkanovski against Ortega, they had a round in which Ortega had 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 submission holds that looked locked in, that it would probably kill a grown gorilla on Alexander Volkanovski. He had a guillotine, he had a triangle hold, and went back to another guillotine, I believe it was. Volkanovski battled and got out of all 3 of them in a point where literally any other man would have been knocked out. Volkanovski still got out of them and just delivered blow after blow after getting out of them in that ground control. This was a great fight from start to finish for this featherweight title fight. But ultimately, Volkanovski got it done. He won by unanimous decision against Brian Ortega. But Brian Ortega put a notice out to the rest of the featherweight division, a division where a lot of people think this is Holloway's division. Volkanovski shouldn't be the title holder here. Give it to Max Holloway. Let him have a fight against Volkanovski. I'm not hearing any side of that. Brian Ortega, win or loss last night, was the true champion in my eyes in that fight. Just being able to battle time and time again. You know, once we got, I think it was the start of the 4th round, going into the 4th round, Brian Ortega could not see. There was a point where Herb Dean was literally in his face with a trainer holding up the number 3. How many numbers am I holding up? I believe Brian Ortega said 2. They changed it to 1. He said, what about now? And he's like, oh, yeah, you have 1 now. So they, kept fighting, went into the 4th round. Ortega battled back, got out of the 4th round, going into the 5th round, and just kept going against Volkanovski. There was no quit at all in Brian Ortega in that fight, and it was absolutely phenomenal to see out of Ortega. And again, at the end of the day, 2 title defenses by Valentina Shevchenko and Alexander Volkanovski in the women's flyweight and the men's featherweight divisions. All around, an awesome and amazing card to check out last night. Also last night, let's give a shout out to the Wolfpack of NC State taking down Clemson in double overtime. Shout out to their quarterback, Devin Leary, 4 or 5 touchdowns in that one to take down the Clemson Tigers. Do the Clemson Tigers even have a ranked spot as we get into the start of the week? We'll see tomorrow whenever the college football rankings come out and what they have to say about the Clemson Tigers. But the rest of the ACC right now is in shambles. I believe there will not be a single ACC team make the playoffs this year. I think it's already obvious that that is a fact right now. Wake Forest still undefeated in the ACC. NC State's making some noise here. Clemson falling off. And see if UNC can get their ship right with quarterback Sam Howell. And the other news, what you usually expect. Clemson wins. Oklahoma comes out very tightly in a field goal at the end of that one. And Ohio State also gets it done without quarterback C.J. Stroud. And that's just the college football rundown we have. Didn't check out much of it yesterday. Elon also came up short against the William Mary Tribe. Had a little bit of a desperation play there at the end of that game, but they also came up short as well. that's the rundown of what we saw yesterday. Now let's get into today. NFL Sunday. A great slate of games. We're going to be talking about all the matchups we have going forward into today's games. The 1 o'clock slate, 4 o'clock slate, Sunday night football tonight, and Monday night football tomorrow. We're going to talk about all of those next before we get to our fantasy starts and sits of the week, and then finally our lock and upset for today that we are expecting to see in the NFL, in the NFL world. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to preview this slate and get right and rolling with the remainder of today's episode. So sit tight. Take a quick break of whatever you need to do. Get some water. Check out some traffic. If you're dealing with that right now, we'll be right back and continue on when we get back. All right, and welcome back here to the Slaw Sports Show. Let's go ahead and get started. NFL Sunday. What's in store? What's on slate for today's matchup? Let's kick it off with the kickoffs at 1 o'clock, the first slate. Let's go ahead and go over to New York, or New Jersey, rather, at MetLife Stadium. They'll be taking on the Atlanta Falcons against the New York Giants today. Daniel Jones, is he primed for a big game? Potentially something we get to later on today's episode. But how about the Atlanta Falcons? They are in a tough spot right now where really ultimately this offense is just straight up struggling. They need to get something figured out offensively. Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts have been too inconsistent with each other. Matt Ryan needs to get things right, get them the ball, feed his weapons. Cordell Patterson cannot be their leading offensive weapon today for the second week in a row. And Arthur Smith in that ground game has to get things rolling with running back Mike Davis against this New York Giants team. And on the flip side, how about the Giants? Saquon Barkley needs to get something going. It's now week 3. You have been healthy for 3 straight weeks. No injury reports, nothing. You need to get the carries and get some production. We've given you 3 weeks to get back from this ACL injury that you had last season. Now is the time for Saquon Barkley. This has to be his game to dominate at home against this terrible Atlanta Falcons defense. We'll see what happens here with Saquon Barkley. Moving things along, let's go to Pittsburgh with the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Steelers right now are damaged all over, starting with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger dealing with a pectoral injury. He was limited all week, officially ruled active. Nothing will keep out Big Ben Roethlisberger out of a divisional game at home. But however, 3 players that are key to this team are out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's start with pass rusher TJ Watt, who's newly paid, got his money, but unfortunately he will be out today against the Cincinnati Bengals, as will linebacker Alex Highsmith, and target fiend wide receiver Deontay Johnson also will be out. A damaging out designation for fantasy owners with Deontay Johnson. That's a tough one, but stay tuned. We'll talk about who to start later on in this episode if you need a flex play in replace of Deontay Johnson in that matchup. And on the Bengals side, pretty much looking healthy. They're outside of T. Higgins, who will be out, I believe, for the Cincinnati Bengals at wide receiver. But outside of that, pretty healthy up front and pretty healthy all around on defense as well. Looking good and looking promising, I believe, for the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. Going to be another game we come back to here later on in today's episode. But keeping things going, let's go to Detroit with the Lions. The Lions at home, sitting at 0-2 on the year. But in comes the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, fresh off knocking off Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Do the Lions start 0-3, losing today at home? That's something to keep an eye on here in this one. Lamar Jackson all week has been dealing with the illness. Looks like he is expected to play against the Detroit Lions. And now we move to Foxborough. Quarterback Mack Jones, the rookie, has the best QBR percentage and rating out of all of the rookie quarterbacks right now. See if he keeps things rolling against the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston and the Saints, who are they? What is their identity? A massive blowout win in Jacksonville in Week 1 against the Green Bay Packers, but Week 2 stumbling against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Now on the road in Foxborough against this Bill Belichick defense. What's in store for Jameis Winston? Are we going to have the 5-touchdown Jameis Winston, or are we going to have the multiple turnover, multiple interception Jameis Winston? That question has to be answered to see what this team is going forward, not even in this division, but also in the conference in the NFC, because we saw what they can do in Week 1 against the NFC powerhouse like they did against the Packers. Now let's see if they can try to turn it back and get this ship right that's already, starting to waver a little bit now in Week 3 with the New Orleans Saints. And how about a divisional matchup in Tennessee? The Titans against the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz, 2 sprained ankles, will play. This guy is a maniac on the field. No reason he should be playing, but the Colts rushed him back. He is active as a starting quarterback against the Tennessee Titans, but watch out. King Henry is already rumbling. We saw it last week against the Seattle Seahawks. We know what Derrick Henry can do against this AFC South division. Does he keep rolling tonight, in a few hours against the Indianapolis Colts at home for the Tennessee Titans? Big thing in this one, A.J. Brown has to get going today against the Indianapolis Colts. Weak secondary, but A.J. Brown hasn't been doing anything the first 2 weeks of the season. We need some post routes. We need some verticals. We need to see the vintage 60, 65-yard touchdowns that we're used to seeing out of A.J. Brown today with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. It's going to boost this entire offense if they can get this defense to play back somewhat against this run. They can't load this box against Derrick Henry all game long. The Titans have to get something going in that passing game. Julio Jones went off last week, but A.J. Brown is the one that has to step up this time against the Colts. Now let's go on to Buffalo. They're going to be taking on the Washington football team. Start number 2 on the year for quarterback Taylor Heinicke, now on the road against Sean McDermott and his defense. Last week, the Buffalo Bills looked great in a 35-0, shutout win against the Miami Dolphins. Picked up 6 sacks against Tua Tagovailoa and Jacoby Brissett. Let's see if Buffalo's defense can keep things rolling, get some pressure now on Taylor Heinicke in this one. Buffalo's offense as well will keep things rolling with Josh Allen at quarterback, and hope to see some more usage out of the running game as well from Buffalo in this one. And now let's go to Jacksonville. Jacksonville Jaguars against the Arizona Cardinals. This one is a key game to keep an eye on. Jacksonville 0-2 to start the season. Lost last week in their home debut with quarterback Trevor Lawrence against the Denver Broncos. Now, Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals are coming to town. An MVP favorite in Kyler Murray coming in on the road against Jacksonville. It's a tough defense that hasn't been doing anything this year in terms of tough as in not doing good, not tough as in dominating or doing anything right. Tough defense, hasn't been getting anything going, and at the same time on offense with Trevor Lawrence really lacking right now. Needs to get the turnovers and interceptions cleared up. He has 5 interceptions in 2 weeks. He has to get that number down considerably today against the Cardinals if the Jacksonville Jaguars have any chance of picking up their first win in this one. And now let's go to Cleveland. Cleveland Browns taking on the Chicago Bears. Debut time as a starting quarterback for Justin Fields. He will get the start today. Andy Dalton is out. Justin Fields is in for the Chicago Bears. What is this offense now going to look like? And does Justin Fields make enough of an impact today for Matt Nagy to say, okay, enough's enough, you are the starter going forward? Or do they return to Andy Dalton after this week? Also, something to consider going forward, looking at this one. moving things along, the final 1 o'clock game today. This one should be on everyone's radar and could be potentially one of the best games of the week. Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City Chiefs against the LA Chargers. This one has everything written up for it, and I'm excited for it. Potential 5 or 10 to 15 even year rivalry in this division could be in the making today with the Chargers and the Chiefs. Justin Herbert against Patrick Mahomes. This one could be a shootout, ladies and gentlemen, that I am very much excited for. Chiefs defense has given up the most yards in the league, which is perfect for Justin Herbert, who had a down week last week with this offense against the Dallas Cowboys at home. Now going on a road against a weak defense with the Chiefs. See if Justin Herbert gets things on and see if we get some fireworks brewing in Arrowhead. And this one, I'm excited for this one. Ready to see these two teams match up and go at it, and see these two quarterbacks have a game for the ages on this 1 o'clock kickoff in Arrowhead. Now let's go to the 4 o'clock games. Let's start with the doozy here in Denver with the Broncos against the Jets. Should I say more? Broncos 2-0 with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. New York Jets struggling with Zach Wilson at quarterback, the rookie quarterback drafted number 2 in this year's NFL draft. But the thing is, the Denver Broncos, they've been great offensively with Teddy Bridgewater, but they have had no pressures at the quarterback position. No one is even getting near Teddy Bridgewater in the backfield, in the pocket in this one. The Jets will need to create some pressure in order to force Teddy Bridgewater into some drastic mistakes that can come back and haunt him at home against the Jets. Not calling for anything here, but just being said, it's a multiple point spread in favor of the Denver Broncos. That's all that needs to be said about this one. Now let's go to Vegas. The Raiders are 2-0. Is John Gruden and Derek Carr back? I think so. It's a little bit of an early overreaction on a Sunday, but 2-0 Raiders taking on the Miami Dolphins at home with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. This team got shut out, like I said, 35-0 last week, while the Raiders, they knocked off the Ravens, and then they knocked off the Steelers in back-to-back weeks, coming back home now in Week 3 against this weak Dolphins unit on offense. Max Crosby has been looking great on that defensive line for the Raiders. Derek Carr and Darren Waller are a menace as a duo together at quarterback and tight end. Love Darren Waller in this matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Ready for this one. Do the Raiders make it to 3-0 in this division in the AFC West? We'll see what happens. See if they keep leading the way above the Chiefs and get above the Denver Broncos at 3-0. And the next 4 o'clock game on our radar today, Minnesota Vikings finally got a home game against the Seattle Seahawks. But this one could be a big game for the Seattle Seahawks. Dalvin Cook has been dealing with an injury all game long. I don't think there's been a report yet of what's fully the outcome with Dalvin Cook, if he's going to be ready to go or not in this one. But nevertheless, the Seattle Seahawks offense is humming with Russell Wilson right now, and Tyler Lockett has been doing great the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm expecting DK Metcalf to get involved in this game as well against a terrible Minnesota Vikings secondary. See if they keep things going here on the road at US Bank Stadium. And finally, the game of the week at 4:25, the LA Rams are taking on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The first time Tom Brady is in LA in his career. That is just remarkable that he has never played in Los Angeles until today. Let's see what happens here. Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady. This one, I'm literally expecting this game to be over 100 passes combined between Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady in this one. I don't think the run game is involved at all on either side in this matchup. This one is literally going to be a shootout between these two quarterbacks and these two offensive head coaches. But things to keep an eye on. Keep your mind on, in this one. You got Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey on the side of the LA Rams. I think they will have the stronger defensive matchup in this one, in this high-scoring offensive affair. The Rams do have the advantage when it comes to the defense. And last but not least, on today's slate, Sunday Night Football in Santa Clara, in San Francisco. The 49ers are hosting the Green Bay Packers. For those that don't know, and everyone most likely does, I am a Green Bay Packers fan, resident fan here on the Slaw Sports Show. Green Bay got right on Monday night against the Detroit Lions at home. Aaron Rodgers looked crisp and ready to go after that Week 1 hiccup against the Saints. Now going in to San Francisco, where Green Bay notoriously has struggled the last couple of years against the 49ers, but a lot of injuries. The injury bug is coming in its annual run in San Francisco. A lot of injuries in that backfield for the 49ers. We'll see if Jimmy Garoppolo can get it done against this Packers defense. Expecting big things from the Packers tonight. Let's see if my heart gets broken yet again as a Packers fan. And Week 3 concludes on Monday night with another divisional matchup. This time, the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC matchup here on Monday night. Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard right now are splitting carries, it seems like. Tony Pollard's making an impact with what carries he does get in this offense. Dak Prescott starting to heat back up a little bit going into Week 3 against this Eagles defense. But for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts has looked phenomenal through 2 weeks. Is he the guy in Philadelphia? He finally gets a primetime matchup to really show himself and potentially make a statement on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. And this one, if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about, you can find us on Twitter at The Slaw Sports Show. Send us a message. You got anything to talk about, any questions to discuss, or anything you want to talk about. Want to come on the show? Send us a message on Twitter at The Slaw Sports Show. Let's go ahead and get to some questions here before we take another break and get to our fantasy start and sits of the week. This is coming off our Instagram poll. What does Mack Jones need to do better in the next 2 weeks? Well, you look at this, Mack Jones has played efficient. And that's, easy to say for a rookie quarterback in a Patriots scheme. He has been an efficient passer the first 2 weeks with the New England Patriots. But today and for the next 2 weeks, I want to see Mack Jones air the ball out. Be aggressive. Take some shots here, especially this week against this New Orleans Saints defense. I want to see Mack take some shots. Don't be the game manager. Don't be throwing dump offs all game long. I know that'll get you the win, especially with this defense that Bill Belichick is orchestrating. But I want to see some juice. I want to see some fire out of Mack Jones during today and also next week. See what he can do and air this ball out some with this New England Patriots offense. We know what Nelson Aguilar can do downfield. Jonnu Smith can be a weapon over the middle as well. Air this ball out today, Mack Jones. Air it out. That's what you can do better this week. And another question. Who do you honestly think will win the Bears game? So we talked about this one. Bears and Browns in Cleveland. Justin Fields is making his debut. And, I don't want to be the Packers fan over here and bet against the Bears. But at the same time, have you seen the Cleveland Brown jerseys they're wearing today? No way they don't win by a million in those jerseys. One thing to keep in mind also with this game, Odell Beckham Jr. is back. He is active as the wide receiver 1 for the Cleveland Browns. No Jarvis Landry, though, on that offense. But Odell is back. And just honestly, Justin Fields, he is the deciding factor in this game. I think the Cleveland Browns run game is going to have a little bit of some struggle, especially against that front 7 of the Chicago Bears. But ultimately, it's going to be Justin Fields against this Cleveland Browns defense, which is going to be one of the best in football this year. We got Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney coming off the edge. Grant Delpit looked great last week in his debut, long-awaited debut. And also Greg Newsome at cornerback. No one is trying him so far the first 2 weeks as a rookie corner. See what happens here with Justin Fields. Does he try Newsome a little bit? Does he try the Warden and Denzel Ward a little bit? That's something to keep in mind and consider as we look forward. Some key headlines we just now got in. Some breaking news. DeAndre Hopkins is officially ready to go. Battling through a rib injury that is reportedly painful. He is ready to go for the Arizona Cardinals and their big matchup in Jacksonville. And Chargers defensive end Joey Bosa is also active in a key game against the Kansas City Chiefs. that's all we have. Keep sending questions our way. We got fantasy talk coming up here after this quick break, and we're going to get to our starts and sits of the week. So any questions, send them my way at Slaw Sports Show, SLAW Sports Show on Twitter. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll get back and talk some fantasy on the Slaw Sports Show. All right, and we are back here now on the Slaw Sports Show. We previewed what's to come today in terms of the slate on Sunday, but now let's talk some fantasy. Get some fantasy questions in here at the Slaw Sports Show on Twitter. What do you guys have questions with? Are you struggling on a certain start or sit between two players? Send them my way. I can try to help you out in this one, and we can try to workshop our way into finding a good start for your fantasy lineup this week. Speaking of good starts, let's start with mine. I have 3 starts this week in fantasy that I think are home run hitters today in fantasy football. Let's start off with DK Metcalf going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Like I said, against the Vikings, rough secondary. And the Seattle Seahawks have been getting things brewing on offense. Last week, we had 11 targets go DK Metcalf's way and 11 targets go Tyler Lockett's way. So no issue there between these two players battling out for targets. Both are getting equal opportunities in this offense and double-digit targets as well. DK just hasn't been able to put it together the first 2 weeks of the season. You look at what he has been able to do in terms of his production through weeks 1 and 2. We'll pull it up here and see how DK has been doing. Let's go ahead. In week 1, Seattle Seahawks against the Indianapolis Colts. DK Metcalf put up 4 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. Not a bad performance, but the target share. You want to see more receptions come DK's way after week 1. Now we go into week 2 and what we saw against the Tennessee Titans overtime game. DK Metcalf had 6 receptions for 53 yards. No score in that one. So the yards not really getting there for DK Metcalf. But you look back to last year against the Minnesota Vikings, DK Metcalf put up 6 receptions, 93 yards, and 2 touchdowns in Week 5 against the Minnesota Vikings. Similar performance I'm expecting to see today out of DK Metcalf. Like I said, if this guy continues to get these double-digit targets in this offense, the production will arrive. And with the weak defense today, those targets will turn into receptions, which will turn yards after the catch, which will turn into potential touchdowns for DK Metcalf today and this offense. So hammer down on DK Metcalf in your lineup. Don't even question it. I know there's been a little bit of some worry the last 2 weeks of DK's performance, but today he gets right against this Vikings defense that has given up the 3rd most points to wide receivers so far this year. Now let's go to start number 2 in fantasy. A guy I am starting in one of my lineups this week is Daniel Jones at quarterback for the New York Giants against this terrible Atlanta Falcons defense. Daniel Jones is at home. Last week, 27 fantasy points in the scoring I have in my league. This guy was great on the ground, rushing for touchdowns, but today I think he's going to be passing for the touchdowns. The Atlanta Falcons have given up 8 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions as a defensive unit. Of course, it came Week 1 against Jalen Hurts, and Week 2, the huge game by Tom Brady. But nevertheless, this team has given up an insane amount of touchdowns against quarterbacks struggling in the passing game as a unit for the Atlanta Falcons. So start Daniel Jones today. It's a great home matchup and a great opportunity for Daniel Jones to prove himself as a potential franchise quarterback for the New York Giants. This is the game today that Daniel Jones needs. He needs to play great today in order to prove things right in front of a home crowd for this franchise going forward for the rest of the season. Expecting big things today from Danny Dimes against the Falcons. In my start number 3, this one's a little bit of a deep start. I'm going to word it here, and it's going to be on our Sunday night game tonight. Trey Sermon at running back against the Green Bay Packers. No Elijah Mitchell, no JaMycal Hasty tonight against the Packers, which means Trey Sermon is finally active. This is a guy I've been on all year long. He was great at Ohio State last year, especially in the college football playoffs. But right now, what we've seen out of Trey Sermon has been nothing so far through the first 2 weeks. Week 1, he was a healthy and active. Week 2, he got 1 carry, suffered what many thought to be a concussion. He was ruled out the rest of the game, but he is in a position to start today for this 49ers backfield that we all know how great this backfield can be for the San Francisco 49ers. But the biggest gripe and complaint against this Kyle Shanahan 49ers backfield is the split. Multiple guys always get involved in the run game for the Niners, but today really no one is behind Trey Sermon. They activated Kerryon Johnson yesterday. They signed him earlier in the week, I believe maybe late last week. But nevertheless, I don't think Kerryon Johnson has had enough time to really get involved in this offense and to really make an impact in tonight's game against the Packers. So hammer down with Trey Sermon in your lineup. I know it's a risky option. It's a deep one, but he could be a great flex play tonight against the Packers. You look at the Packers defense so far this year, they have a 2% stuff rating. 2% of run plays get stuffed, which means stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. You can run all day on the Green Bay Packers. The team has 0 tackles for a loss through 2 games against the Saints and the Detroit Lions. Trey Sermon has a shot today to prove his worth with the 49ers in this one. So that's my last start. A deep start at flex is going to be Trey Sermon in fantasy tonight against the Packers. Now let's flip the script and look at some sits. Avoid these guys at all costs. Fantasy owners, if you recognize these names, make sure to check it. We got another looks like an hour and 12 minutes before lineup set at 1 o'clock. If these names are on your team, take them out now. Let's start with Sony Michel against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everyone, all week, no Darrell Henderson. No Darrell Henderson. We got to start Sony Michel. Sony Michel. Do not start Sony Michel today against the Buccaneers. I don't care if Henderson is out or not. This one is going to be an offensive shootout through the passing game. I don't think the running backs will be getting involved at all on either side. PPR, maybe with Sony Michel if you can get those reception points and from Michel out of the backfield. But what we've seen from him so far should not be any indication that you should start Sony Michel against the Buccaneers. From what we've seen so far, Week 1 had 0.2 points against the Chicago Bears. Week 2 came back a little bit, but only had 4.6 points against the Colts. This is 100 passing day in LA. I think both these quarterbacks combined for 100 passes today with Stafford and Tom Brady. Do not start Sony Michel in this one. You look at the matchup. Look what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done so far against running backs. Week 1 against Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott only put up 33 yards on the ground against this defensive front of the Buccaneers. And Mike Davis in Week 2 for the Falcons only put up 38 yards. So do not start Sony Michel. Sit him this week in fantasy. My number 2 sit of the week. Let's go with another running back here, this time for Jacksonville, James Robinson. Don't sit him. The Jacksonville Jaguars have had 0 rushing attempts inside the red zone. I don't think that's going to change today against this Arizona Cardinals defense. The Cardinals defense looked great especially in the run game in week 1. They were flat out stopping Derrick Henry. Isaiah Simmons was a monster in that game. If not on the stat sheet, but you looked at his performance constantly in the face of Derrick Henry and bringing him down in that game in week 1. And in week 2, don't blow this out of proportion. Dalvin Cook did rush for 131 yards on 22 carries against the Cardinals, but that's Dalvin Cook in a tough game that went down to the wire. In that one, the Vikings jumped out early in that one, were able to get some running yards going, but at the same time, the passing game opened up a lot for Dalvin Cook in that game last week against the Cardinals. That's not going to be the case this week for the Jacksonville Jaguars against this Cardinals defense. Right now, what we've seen from James Robinson, 8.4 points in week 1, 9.4 in week 2, went up a point from week to week, from week 1 to week 2. But at the same time, he had 5 rushes in week 1, 11 rushes in week 2. Today, again, Jacksonville has not called any rushing plays in the red zone. And just how this defense has played in the past with the Arizona Cardinals the last 2 weeks, I don't like this matchup for James Robinson. So if you have James Robinson in this one, be wary and sit him in this one against the Arizona Cardinals. Find another option to put in at running back 2 or potentially flex wherever you have James Robinson playing. So sit Sony Michel and sit also James Robinson against the Arizona Cardinals. That's our fantasy sit and starts of the week. Take another quick break, and when we come back, we will have our lock of the week and our upset of the week here on the Slaw Sports Show. Sit tight, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back here on the Slaw Sports Show. We talked some fantasy. We've talked some slates that we are seeing of all the games today in the NFL. Now let's get right to it and do our picks of the week. We got one lock and one upset that we will do each and every week for the NFL season. Starting off today, our lock of the week. Give me the Baltimore Ravens against the Detroit Lions. Doom, lock it in. Lamar Jackson is active, expected to play with his illness going on. He was questionable all week long with that illness. He should be ready to go on the road against the Detroit Lions. The Lions have given up 41 points and 35 points in back-to-back weeks defensively, and the Baltimore Ravens are rolling right now after last week taking down the Kansas City Chiefs. This one is a big one to keep an eye on here, and ultimately going to be my lock of the week. Give me the Baltimore Ravens. They are favored by 7.5. Lock it in. Doom over the Detroit Lions. Something we do have to consider here, though, for the Baltimore Ravens, something I'm going to pull up here and discuss, injuries. The Baltimore Ravens have placed Brandon Williams, Justin Madubake, linebacker Justin Houston, and Jalen Ferguson all on the reserve COVID-19 list. They are all out for this game against the Detroit Lions. And also, the Ravens rolled out Ronnie Stanley, Derek Wolfe, and Lamar Jackson, again, dealing with his illness. He will play. Marquise Brown should be full go with his ankle. Pernell McPhee dealing with a shoulder injury. Jimmy Smith dealing with an ankle injury. Travion Young dealing with a knee injury. And safety Deshaun Elliott has a concussion. Those ones are all questionable in this one. I say it don't matter against the Detroit Lions. Give me the Baltimore Ravens here as my lock of the week. This one is a easy one, in my opinion, at negative 7.5 favorites on the road for the Baltimore Ravens. And here we do have a update. Hollywood Brown is officially active. So got that one right. Hollywood Brown is a full go for the Baltimore Ravens in this one. And now let's go to Upset Central. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals upsetting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers a 3-point favorite at home. I like the Bengals' chance here on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers dealing with injuries at key positions, especially on that defensive side. No Alex Highsmith, no TJ Watt. That's a tough look and a tough beat for that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Also, an injured Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. This defense of the Cincinnati Bengals needs to get after Big Ben in this one if they have a shot here for an upset. And also offensively, for the Steelers that I talked about, no Deontay Johnson at wide receiver. So the Steelers are going to rely on a big game here from Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster in this passing game. But ultimately, I think they get it done. I think the Bengals pull off the upset on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not buying the Steelers. I'm not buying what they put up this year, and I'm not in big favor of what the Steelers can do as an offense this year. They have no identity. The Steelers are literally in an identity crisis right now. They don't know what to do on offense. Defense hasn't been looked that great either. Last week, Derek Carr and the Raiders, shredded them up and getting that win on the road in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh now again at home against the Bengals. I don't know. I have a strange inclination that Joe Burrow cleans it up. 3 interceptions last week with 2 touchdowns. I think Joe Burrow cleans it up this week and has a great game. He's got Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd to throw to. No T. Higgins. We also got a report here in the last few minutes. He will be inactive for the Cincinnati Bengals. But at the same time, I'm feeling it for the Bengals in this one on the road against the Steelers. Steelers a 3-point favorite at home in this one. I smell an upset. I smell an upset for the Cincinnati Bengals. Last matchup between these two teams, Cincinnati won at home, 27-17. No Joe Burrow. That was during his ACL, or as he was out for the season with an ACL. Late in the season when the Bengals took off the Steelers. I believe that was even a Monday night game, a primetime game. The Bengals took down the Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, that one was in Cincinnati. Today is in Pittsburgh. But at the same time, I'm still feeling it. I'm feeling the upset for the Cincinnati Bengals on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are my 2 picks of the week. We'll see what happens here. Again, Baltimore Ravens, lock it in. Doom against the Detroit Lions. And Cincinnati Bengals, we'll take them as an upset of the week here against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like it. There's a couple other ones I considered. Colts over Titans I thought about with Carson Wentz full go. But Derrick Henry, man, he's a menace, and he's getting rolling early. So I didn't really like the Indianapolis Colts all too much last week. So again, I don't like him again this week and that one. So my upset, I will be taking the Cincinnati Bengals over the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to get out of here a little bit early today. Cut it a little bit short. We got to get rolling and get ready for some football. Some more prop bets we got to place here and there, and some more picks we still got to make on this slate. One thing to keep in mind, another update coming in here late. This one from My Sports Update. Giants running back Saquon Barkley was not on the final injury report this week, indicating he should be a full go against the Atlanta Falcons. Another big indicator, his backup Devontae Booker is a surprise inactive. The only other running back active today is Gary Brightwell, but the Giants will be carrying 2 fullbacks. Big game for Saquon Barkley today. Also, an update from Ian Rappaport. One storyline to also watch in this Giants game. First-round pick Kadarius Toney had an excellent week of practice and should see his most snaps yet this season. He'll be a prominent part of the offensive game plan today, so he'll have his chances. I really like this game for the New York Giants at home against the Falcons. Again, start Daniel Jones against this Falcons defense, and hopefully Saquon Barkley gets right and gets rolling for this team before the Giants bottom out to start the season. Big game in the Meadowland here for the Giants against the Falcons. that's all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for tuning in. Those who stopped by on YouTube, those who stopped by on WSOE 89.3 as well, those driving along the Elon Burlington area, thanks for stopping by. Get your lineups set. Get them in before 1 o'clock when these lineups lock up for fantasy. And, of course, enjoy this full slate of football we have. Let's have a day. Let's have a great day in the NFL. And until next time, peace.